Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of the very, very windy city of Boston. We are so honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Audible, CastBox, Player FM, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have an absolutely wonderful show lined up for you today. First up, we talk with the author and illustrator of Bridget van der Puff and the Baked Escape, author Martin Stewart and illustrator David Haben. And later in the show, we meet Susan Polk Van Dusen. She's here to celebrate what's so special about a tree. Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. We are in for a wee bit of fun in this interview on Reading with Your Kids. First, joining us from Scotland, he is the author of Bridget van der Puff and the Baked Express. Please welcome to the show, Martin Stewart. Hey, Martin, how are you?
Hi, Jed. I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Delighted to have you on. Martin and I were just chatting about his home of Scotland. I was there a few months ago, and what a beautiful place it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've actually, as happens when people visit a country, I think you might have seen more of it than I have. Having gone on such a big adventure where I go to the same bits of it. But yeah, I love it here. I've lived here my whole life. I now live in a little town on the west coast right next to the water, which is very similar. It's a lot of where the inspiration comes from for where Bridget lives, because she lives by the water. And that's always been something that's quite important to me.
That's wonderful. Also joining us from the beautiful state of Utah is the illustrator, David Haben. Hey, David, how are you?
I'm so good. Thanks so much for having me.
Delighted to have you on. We actually, I was talking to David about my drive a few years back through the red rocks of Utah and feeling like I had been transported to a different planet. It was just spectacular.
Yeah, those areas around our national parks are just gorgeous. Well worth the drive and the stay if you can make it.
Yeah, absolutely. Martin, tell us about Bridget Van de Puff. Who is this young person?
Well, Bridget is somebody who arrived quite fully formed in my head as a character. It was the first time that I've had that experience that I've heard other writers talk about, where the character sort of demands to have their story told. And I couldn't find the right story for her. I wrote initially a shorter book that was maybe, if I can use a sort of Roald Dahl scale of story length, I wrote it as a sort of beginner's early reader chapter book, maybe like Fantastic Mr. Fox. And it just wasn't quite right. She needed a bit more. There needed to be more meat on the bone for Bridget to really get her teeth into. And so over the process of maybe 3 or 4 quite kind of major full rewrites and about 5 years, it turned into a longer book. And if I'm going to stick with my Roald Dahl scale, it's more like a Matilda-sized book now. It's just, around sort of 40,000 words. And it really gave Bridget much more space to develop all her instincts and her adventure. And I had written it initially in response to the birth of my first child, because the work that I had done previously is more for older readers. It was YA. I had written something that was a sort of funnier Scottish Stranger Things type book, which was called The Sacrifice Box, which I wrote before Stranger Things had come out, which I think is important, at least for me, to know that, And I was really excited about writing something that my kids would be able to read before that, and that would be a story for them. And so the character of Bridget was really inspired by her kind of fearlessness, the sort of fearless confidence that children have as they're emerging as their own characters. And I channeled all that into Bridget, and lots of different things that I'd always really wanted to play with in stories, like inventions and gadgets. I mean, I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in 1982. And so things like the Ghostbusters with their sort of, their own, kind of their packs and the little ghost traps that they built for themselves, or Inspector Gadget, all these I always think it's so interesting to reflect on where your storytelling DNA comes from. I really am quite aware of all these different influences. And so Bridget has lots of different gadgets that she makes herself. She has her paraskirt, she has her listening glass. And I always have loved detective stories. And so Bridget, once we get into the second book, because we start off with The Baked Escape, and then in the second book, which is also out in the US, it's Bridget and the Ghost Train. And we're really into kind of Sherlock Holmes territory with that. And she gets into her kind of detecting mode. And the big thing at the heart of it, because it's the first book is called Bridget Van de Puff and the Baked Escape. She escapes Miss Ackroyd's orphanage for errant childs and goes to live with Mr. Van de Puff in his fabulous bakery. And Bridget, who's always been able to do everything perfectly, she has been brilliant at everything she's ever tried, finds when she gets to the bakery that actually the one thing she cannot do is bake, which is a terrible time to find this out for the first time. So when Mr. Van de Puff tries to teach her to whip cream, she does it so badly the cream begins screaming and jumps out the bowl and runs around the kitchen. And when he tries to teach her how to make jelly, she puts in far too much lemon juice and it starts exploding everywhere. And what happens in the story, she's very worried that this means this forever home of hers is not going to work out. And of course, that's not how Mr. Van de Puff sees it. He loves her. There's no risk to her that she'll ever go back. But before they can even have that conversation, Miss Ackroyd returns from the orphanage, kidnaps Mr. Van de Puff, and Bridget realizes that these terrible things that she has failed to make are exactly what she needs to rescue him. So she paints chocolate on her cheeks and gets tooled up with scream cream and jelly mite and suction cupcakes and razor buns and goes off to rescue him. And it's great fun. It's, I really enjoyed putting it together. There's lots of silliness and jokes and lots of love in it. And the way that it was manifest and sort of conjured into being, and I'm using conjured deliberately because it's such a magical process to me by David's illustrations, has just been the highlight of my career. It's just a joy to see them, and it's been such a fun collaboration.
Wow. Well, it's obvious that you are passionate about it, just the way you're talking about Bridget and the circumstances. You really light up. So it still brings you a lot of joy, and I imagine it's going to bring readers lots and lots of joy. David, as Martin was talking, I'm wondering, what were you most excited about when you began the illustration project? Illustrating Bridget and bringing her visually to life, or bringing all those crazy gadgets that she was going to be playing with to life?
They're both so fun, and Bridget's such a great character. I think such a cool example for kids, as we've been talking through the last couple of years of the books, and now as we share them with other people, being able to show them an example in Bridget of someone who is, like Martin said, like has all of these skills, but there's one thing that she just really struggles with, but then turns that struggle into something, beneficial. Drawing that kind of character is super fun, and trying to figure out how to bring that element of her confidence and also vulnerability to life. So she's really great and fun to draw. Of course, the big hair and all of the things that go into that is always a fun scribble. But yeah, playing with the gadgets is really fun. And as Martin was just talking about it, I was thinking how so many of the gadgets that our kids experience now are kind of screen based. They're really slick and smooth and futuristic by comparison. But I'm about the same age as Martin, and so I grew up thinking in terms of gadgets as gears and wires and plugs and more ornate. And to have the opportunity to draw some of those things in the book was really great, to make things that were mechanical and like fun in their design, and also just be able to build out that world a bit visually that Martin had described so well with his words. It was great fun.
Yeah. My son was into the Comic-Con world, and I exhibited at a couple of those, and the steampunk characters that came through talking, those were like, that's so cool. It just looks so cool, those worlds, because I'm so much older than both of you. It really appealed to me. So I'm wondering, Martin, you are so invested in Bridget, and as you said, she just came to you full. And was it hard for you to let go and to allow an illustrator to kind of bring her to life visually?
Do you know, I think it might have been, but not working. I'm trying not to suck up too much to David here, but I mean, it really wasn't, because there was an earlier pass at illustration, and some other illustrators had sent their version of Bridget, and some of them were quite that sort of scratchy Quentin Blake style, and others of them had a slightly more kind of Tim Burton Gothic type energy, and they were all very nice. And I mean, I can't draw, so I couldn't do this for myself. So I'd said before, I described it as conjuring. It feels like there's such an alchemy to it, and I'm delighted by those. I mean, how fun, these people drawing these characters that I had made up, but it just wasn't quite right. And then David stuff came afterwards, and it was it was a moment that, I think I said it was the highlight of my career. And that was a moment that, becoming an author, and I've been doing this full time for 10 years, there are lots of things that are kind of surprising about it, and not disappointing isn't the right word, but your everyday is not book launches or podcast recordings. Most of it is spent trying to convince my children to eat their dinner or taking the bins out. It's just, there's just a grind, And so there are punctuation marks across this 10-year period, and opening the email, which had David's sketches in it. And it was like, oh, there she is. And I remember showing them to my wife, like so excited, like, look at this. And it was the hair. There was a couple in particular, one of which you had when you were on TV discussing it, David, where she's running with the hair. And there was another one where Bridget is sitting with her arms folded and this sort of crown of curls. And it was just, oh yes. And it was, there it is. And so the process was very easy to trust. He'd already done it. I mean, it's like he had seen into my soul and drawn it. So it was fine. I felt quite relaxed going forward from there. And there was a couple of, what a fun process, where we had gone back and forth and discussed a couple of times, what do you think? Is this how this character should look? And I would send back some verbal nonsense of, well, maybe she should be taller, and I don't know, maybe she looks a bit chill, and maybe she should be freaking out a bit more, or just this sort of blah, blah, blah. And he would say, oh, so how about this? And just, it was like a bunch of loose threads that he just tied in this neat little bow every time. And it was all perfect. I mean, it's such a nice process. And I gave him some really tricky ones to do, because Miss Acted, all the meanies, Bridget is, this is a very small spoiler. We find out in the second book that Bridget is not just assailed by individuals, but by the nefarious league of meanies. And what the meanies' weapon of choice, their sort of lightsaber, is a salmon sword, which is a fish-shaped sword. Now, I didn't have to conceive of what that might look like, but David did, and did it perfectly, And there was a couple of other things, including a character in book 4, to jump ahead, who is described as somehow possessing twin monobrows. And I remember saying to my wife, I've no idea what David's going to do with this. Because it's such a funny thing to write. I don't know how you'll draw it. And he did it, So it's just been a joy from start to finish.
That's it's just hear you describe these things is making me laugh. I love it. David, I'm wondering, I've heard authors, Martin talked about, Bridget just kind of came to him. I've heard authors oftentimes talk to me about, I was really surprised where the story went. She just took me in a direction. I was just listening to her. And I kind of get I'm a performer, so I understand inspiration and not knowing where it comes from sometimes. But does that ever happen with you when you're illustrating? Do you sit down with a blank canvas or screen and start to go to work, and then at the end, when you finish, look up and go, where the heck did that come from?
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. And, Martin's so nice in talking about that process, man. And I'm so glad that the characters worked out in the way that he wanted, and that we could make that work together. And I think, to your point, Jed, there's times where I'll be working on a character with someone's description, and especially with this book in particular, where it's almost as if the character is kind of responding to me drawing. And I think other illustrators have experienced the same kind of thing, where you're drawing a character and you're trying to sort out, some of the things that need to be included in their personality or in their appearance. And it's almost as if the character is kind of looking at you and like, no, that's not right. That's not right. And in those initial sketches that Martin was mentioning, that kind of like grumpy attitude, thinking about this, girl that's sitting there frustrated and maybe hitting some opposition that she hasn't felt before. And how does that feel? And then just kind of channeling into that and then sketching it out. It's a sense of like, yeah, she's telling me right now, this is how it feels. And if I don't get that arm right, no, that's not how it feels yet. And there's this kind of dialogue almost back and forth between me and the character to be able to say like, is this who you are yet? Is this right? And they'll come in, no, that's not me yet. And then, eventually we get to a point where like, oh, okay, there you are. I found you. And so it's so great to hear Martin share that, like when he saw it was the same thing of like, oh, there she is. Cause it's the same process for me drawing. I'm like, where are you, Bridget? Where are we going with this? And then there's a point where like, oh, okay, I got you. There you are. Now I can see who you are and draw you a little bit more accurately. And, So in that sense, yeah, I guess it kind of comes up like, where did that come from? But also it feels like a very conscious dialogue going back and forth with the characters.
Awesome. I'm curious, David. When we've had illustrators and author teams on before who were creating picture books, I was very surprised to hear that there's little to no communication between an author and an illustrator typically.
Yeah.
It sounds like you and Martin were had much more of a collaborative process. Did that feel comfortable to you? Did you ever kind of get off the phone or email and think, dude, I'm the illustrator. I know what I'm talking about here.
No, I love the collaborative process. And I think, when you hear that from children's book authors, especially and illustrators, there's a long history of this sense of like an author's wanting one thing and an illustrator's wanting something else, and they both want to have their creative ideas represented. And so publishers will come in and they'll kind of like draw some lines between it, and they'll be go-betweens because they don't want to create any conflict. There's just a little bit of mediation sometimes that has to happen. And I get that, and that's fine. There's also, of course, the idea of pairing maybe newer authors with more experienced illustrators or vice versa to, make that work more smoothly. But I think I'm at a point for me where I've done this long enough. Martin obviously has written long enough that it was really great to hear as directly from him as often. There would be, the editors and designers going back and forth between us, but when we could read each other's notes a little bit or share sketches directly, that was great for me. I think, going back to what Martin said about the process before, that sense of we're both on this kind of journey together. He's writing these stories. I'm trying to bring the visual element to it. Finding that groove that we can both be in is really my ideal situation as an illustrator. I love working directly with those authors like that.
Yeah. Martin, I love that you have all these characters, and I love that there's plans for more and more Bridget Vanderpuff books. I would hope that at some point in one of the books we have one of the favorite things that I was introduced to when I visited Scotland. I call it the hippie cow. I think the correct name is the healing cow.
That was very good. That was great. Yeah.
Yeah, but
it's a technically in the Queen's English, it would be a Highland cow.
Okay.
But I would call it exactly as you said, Jed. I would call it a healing coo.
Yes.
So you might have seen in Glasgow, depending on where you stopped when you visited, there is a bridge at the main train station in Glasgow, Central Station. And that's where all the guys who came to work in the city but went back to the Highlands at the weekend after their work, they would shelter there from the rain. And so it's known locally as, and I'm going to just lean into my accent here, it's known as the Hilleman's umbrella. And if I slow that down, that is the Highland man's umbrella. So there you go. And it says that's the healing coo, the Hilleman is a Highland man. So yeah, absolutely, a healing coo. Do you know, I have to say, and I can imagine how brilliantly David would have drawn a healing coo, which is, that's the cow with the big long sort of red ginger fringe and the big horns.
Oh yeah.
There's one voiced by David Tennant in the surprisingly good animated John Cena cartoon of Ferdinand the Bull.
Mm-hmm.
There's a healing coo in that. It was a great film, I have to say. It was good fun. There's not a healing coo in Bridget, unfortunately. And that's because I say we, over here, the first book came out just over 18 months ago. So it came out here in June 2023. And so all 4 books in the series are actually out here. The last one came out in the UK in September. And so Bridget's story is fully formed at the moment. I think there is, and excuse me, my doorbell has just gone. Please forgive me. That is my dog. I hope
we didn't hear it. Don't worry.
I hope you've not been able to hear my dog snoring or anything because he's lying beside me here. Come on. So Bridget's story, I would love to revisit it dearly. And I can think of lots of things that I would like for her to do. But at the moment, the series is 4 books. And so those 4 books are already here. So it's the first 2 are with you guys in the States now, which I know is something that David's really been looking forward to, because this is obviously something that he's worked on so much. and it's now with him. It's now on his side of the pond. And the third one, which is Bridget Vanderpuff and the Great Airship Robbery, is out in the States in September. And then the final one at book 4 is early 2026. So, and that's the thing. I need to, as I'm talking about her, I need to sort of remember we're talking about book 1 and 2 and not be too spoilery and not get too ahead of myself.
Yeah.
Well, we're all about encouraging families to read together or co-read books, middle grade novels, YA titles. And it sounds like Bridget Vanderpuff and The Baked Escape and all the Bridget books. I'm a big fan of co-reading, reading separately and then coming together and talking about it. But I know that if my kids were in the middle grade age right now and we're living at home, I would choose to read this out loud with them and take turns. Because I have a feeling that just listening to your descriptions of the gadgets and of Bridget and her attitude and the smearing the chocolate on her cheeks, I'd have a blast narrating that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very good fun. I have written it for that, I think. I remember I was a big reader of Terry Pratchett when I was younger. And I know that he said when he had written for younger readers, that was the Tiffany Aching books, and the Trucker series that he had written. I remember reading an interview with him where he had talked about the kind of pact that you have with the parents. And you're writing for your young readership. You're also writing for the adults who read with them. And that was something that there are little footnotes. That's a very Terry Pratchett thing that I had always wanted to do. So there are footnotes throughout the books that add little asides and little extra details of Bridget's world, and occasionally wee jokes that would really go over the kids' heads that the adults might get, not in a kind of not pushing the boundaries of kind of appropriateness or anything, but really in that way that, like the great Pixar movies, when you're really playing it on both levels simultaneously, and there's things that the kids will find funny, and there's little, Easter egg movie references and things that the adults would find funny. And I mean, I completely agree with you. I was a high school teacher of English before I did this. And that was in a couple of different schools. I taught round about Glasgow and then down here, sort of in Ayrshire, kind of nearer the coast and things. And something that I always found was that everybody, even quite rowdy classes, filled with kids who would not self-identify as readers or who would believe that maybe books and reading weren't necessarily for them. Kids who wouldn't have books at home, say, they all loved being read to so much. It's really like a magic trick. And it's the same now. I do a lot of work in schools now, and I run a lot of workshops, and I go in and present and things. And when you're reading, I read the second half of the first chapter of Bridget, and there's various bits of my other books, and for older readers and things that are the bits that I always read. And there's just there's a sort of hush descends, and people love being read to. And my daughter, this is the really nice thing, I'd said that Bridget was inspired initially by wanting to write this character, wanting to write something for younger readers that my kids would be able to read. She is 8 at the end of next month. And so she's really in that emergent reader stage where she's beginning to read her own books. And she's carrying a book around the house and reading it as she walks to the car and things, which is fantastic. And so reading with her and talking to her about her books and what she likes about them and all these things, the exchange that you get from that, there's such a deep connection that comes with it, I think, when you share reading. And as you say, it's that thing of reading separately and then coming together to talk about it and reading the books together, I think is wonderful. And I really hope that, certainly that's the way that I've intended to write the books. The language is supposed to be rich and fun. And there's lots of jokes in them. I mean, everything I've written is funny, he says. I've tried to make everything I write funny. I find it very difficult to write without jokes. I think that life is funny, and I don't find it possible to write honestly about life or people without making it funny, even in the depths of some of the quite challenging things, and there are difficult things that have happened to Bridget. She, we find out very classic. She begins her life in the orphanage for errant childs. And so she's had a difficult start in life. She goes to live with Mr. Vanderpuff, and we learn in the first book some of the challenges that Mr. Vanderpuff has had. And, that's something that they share. What they both need is love, and they find it with each other, that found family. But even in those moments of pathos, and where we find out the difficult things that have happened to them, it's still funny. Life is always funny, and that there is always light in the darkness, and that's a really centrally important part of my writing.
Yeah, I think that's an important message to give our kids, that there is always light in the darkness. David, Martin said he's funny. Do you?
Always funny. The books are funny every time we talk. He's just got joy and life coming out of him, and I love it. This is last month or so was our first time to actually be on a call and hear each other's voice, and it was just such a joy hearing him for the first time and seeing him, and he embodies that spirit of the Vanderpuff books, and I just have loved working with him and hearing from him. He's just a light. He's great.
That's wonderful. Martin, I am turning 8 with another digit in front of that number at the end of March myself. Wow. Please wish your daughter happy birthday from me.
I will, and hey, right back at you. Wow, hey, you're looking fantastic.
Thank
Go
you. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Bridget Vanderpuff and the Baked Express. Martin, why don't we start with you? And is there a website for the book and also one for you?
Yeah, there is www.bridgetvanderpuff.com, which has some more information about Bridget, about who she is, about her world. It has some of David's work on it. There are a couple of wee downloadable things, like a word search, little puzzles and things that you can get there, some extras, and a bit more information about me, if you were interested. And aside from that, the only social media I have now is Instagram, where I mostly am posting sort of adventures in bookshops and visiting schools and things. And that is Martin_J_Stewart on Instagram.
Awesome. David, where can we go to find out more about you and your other works?
Sure. You can look at my website, just davidhaben.com, and that has all of my kids' work on it. And then if you go to that site, there's a link for habeninc.com, which is more of my editorial illustration work. When you go to davidhaben.com, I've got projects there for the Vanderpuff series, and you can see the covers and the artwork that went into those books and hear more about that. Here, of course, you can buy the book at all over the place online. Highly encourage you to look at some of the local bookstores that are going to have it. We've had some events here in Utah that I've done, and I might be up in Idaho in March for Read Across America, doing some events up there to promote it at bookstores and schools.
Awesome. And we also encourage folks to go to their local public library and request books too. That's a great way to help the authors and help your neighbors get introduced to wonderful books. Gentlemen, I want to challenge you. Please reach out to your publisher and say, we want to go on tour and we want to go to Boston.
Love
Come
it.
and visit us.
Anytime. Would love to.
Love that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Bridget Vanderpuff and the Baked Express. Our guests have been Martin Stewart and David Haben. My friends, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jed.
This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Woofy and the Dinosaur Adventures, delightful children's book written by Helen Rogerson. Woofy awakens suddenly to a feeling that his friend Bun needs him. When he arrives at the place his nose leads him, Woofy is confused and doesn't find Bun right away. Then a shout from above leads to an amazing experience as he puts his paleontology skills to work. Together, he, Bun, and a cat that hangs around the site wrap up a wonderful adventure involving a T-Rex skull and a very cool twist of an ending. The story is told in a lyrical style that incorporates actual fossil hunting concepts and vocabulary. If you like dinosaurs, friends who help, and adventures, you will love this book. You can check out Woofy and the Dinosaur Adventures and all the Woofy books at unpackyourownhappy.com. Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Hey there, families! Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is Family Fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. Join us right now from the beautiful state of Arkansas. Our guest is here today to celebrate a really special series of books. We're going to be talking about what's so special about a tree and also our friend the cowboy. Please welcome to the show, Susan Polk Van Dusen. Suzanne, how are you?
I'm great. It's actually Susan. I didn't want to mean to correct you, but I just wanted to be sure.
I've spent my life being corrected. I am very comfortable with it because I am very comfortable dealing with the fact that I make lots of mistakes like we all do.
Yeah, we all do. But yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Susan, tell us about what's so special about a tree.
Well, what's so special about a tree is the first book in my art and verse picture book series. It is a picture book, and it's written for very young kids, preschoolers through about age 7. It has a rhyming verse, and it's paired with beautiful original paintings and drawings by my dad, who was an artist. The book's message is very simple, just that we should appreciate the beauty and importance of all the trees that are around us in our world. And I hope it inspires some young nature lovers out there.
Yeah, I grew up in the city here in Boston. And I never considered myself a tree hugger. But there have been many times in my life where I have seen trees cut down, trees that I've seen every day, or get knocked down. And then we actually had to bring down a tree that was threatening our home that had been such a big part of our home and our family for years. And it really affected me emotionally. Trees are pretty darn special.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely become attached to trees or any part of nature. And I think that's really important to nurture in young kids, because the younger, the more you learn about the importance of nature, just the basics, the trees provide the oxygen that we breathe. They give us shade. They help to cool the earth. They give the animals a place to live. These very basic concepts. And if you can learn to, have empathy for nature, then that carries on to caring about the animals, caring about other people, and all of that. I think the younger you are, when you can start feeling those sorts of feelings, I think that's a good thing.
I agree with you. What was the inspiration for what's so special about a tree?
Well, I'll just kind of give you the backstory. Like I said, all of the art is by my dad. He passed away on March 1st of 2020. But he was an artist. He lived in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And he was always talented. I mean, he was always drawing. I have some of his drawings from the 1950s, you know, when he was a kid, when he would be drawing and sketching and things. But he was a U.S. history teacher in public school for over 30 years. And then he retired from that pretty early when he was in his 50s. Then he went on to be ordained into the United Methodist Church, and he worked part-time as a pastor. That was his second career. But during that time, he really started taking art lessons, and particularly watercolor, and learning the skills and developing his own style. And he became very prolific. Unfortunately, he had a degenerative lung disease. And so when he became confined to his house in about 2018, he would just paint, you know, and that was a blessing that he was able to do that, you know, to occupy his mind and his time during his illness. Well, like I said, he passed away in early 2020, and then my mom passed away in 2023. And I am an only child, so I inherited everything, which included all of the paintings and drawings that were still in her possession at that point, that hadn't been given away. He never really sold much, you know, but he gave away a lot over the years. But I ended up inheriting about 400 of his paintings, and they were, you know, they're hanging all over our house. Our daughters have them, you know, his friends and relatives and everyone have them. But there was still a lot, and it was kind of overwhelming trying to figure out what am I supposed to do with all of this? You know, I want to do something meaningful. I don't want to just put it in a closet. They're beautiful paintings, all sorts of different subjects. There's butterflies, there's pastoral scenes, there's barns, there's obviously trees, there's cowboys, there's all, you know, all sorts of themes that he painted on over the years. And so I took a friend's advice, and I grouped them all, organized them, made a spreadsheet. I numbered them all and got them all in a way where I could kind of mentally deal with it. And it helped me process also, you know, losing him and you know, going through all of those piece by piece. But it just sort of came to me one day. I've been a writer professionally for my entire career in one capacity or another, public relations or publishing, different areas. And so I've always wanted to write a children's book, and it just sort of came to me. I own all this art. Maybe I could use it in a children's book. And so I just picked a theme that was easy for little kids to understand, which was trees. He had lots and lots of paintings of trees. I just scratched the surface of the tree paintings. But I picked 14 that were different kinds of trees. Some were big, some were tall, some were realistic, some were kind of whimsical looking. And I just wrote this little rhyming verse to go with it and laid it out, and in a book form, showed it to my husband, and I could tell he was genuinely thought it was a special, you know, a special thing to do. So that's kind of where the inspiration came from. And I got a lot of positive feedback, not only from the book, you know, itself, but also from the story behind it, that people felt like it was a meaningful thing to do. And I feel like it is too. I feel like he would definitely approve of it, and I've enjoyed being part of publishing these books. So that's how I decided to continue on with the series.
This, I don't mean this to be flippant at all. I hope you don't think it's a strange question, but as you are involved in this unique collaboration with your dad, are you feeling him helping you write the verse? Are you hearing inspiration?
You know, it has definitely brought me closer, you know, I felt like closer to him, and just appreciating his talent. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was very interested in lots of things, art and politics and history, and you know, he had lots of varied interests, and so some of them I shared and some of them I didn't particularly, but you know, but being able to go through, and yeah, I definitely can feel his presence and his inspiration.
Yeah. And what a beautiful memorial for your dad. You know, he is going to be touching families for years and years to come.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of what I wanted. I wanted people to see the art. Like I said, I didn't want it to sit in a closet and or just hang in our house where only a few people would ever see it. And this way, I've been excited, I'll sell a book in England or in Germany or something like that. It's very exciting, all over the country. And so just seeing that and thinking, oh my gosh, there's people, who would have never seen or heard of him. And now they get to see the beautiful paintings. So,
yeah. You were also telling me that our friend the cowboy is coming out in the next few weeks or so.
Yes, March 11th, 2025 is the release date, and it is the same style book. My short rhyming verse, and his mostly watercolors, although there are some pencil drawings as well. But it's just a fun little ride through the Wild West, and for kids who love horses and cowboys, and I think they'll really enjoy it. Yeah.
Now, living in Arkansas, where was your dad's? I've never been to Arkansas. It might be a very logical connection, but I don't think of cowboys in Arkansas.
No, there was no connection there. He just had a lot of different interests, and he would actually look up pictures on the internet of interesting looking people, and he would paint a lot of portraits or historical events, or there's all sorts of paintings, seashells, and barns, and it's just there's lots and lots, like I said, 400. So there's lots of different paintings. So it's just he would kind of get interested in a subject matter and do like a series on those. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of helpful for me to be able to do these books on a particular subject, but I'm also working on being able to combine different subject matters into one book, like things that we're thankful for, maybe, things we see in the world, things we see in our town, or, that sort of thing. And I can combine different subjects into one. But I see definitely being able to pull probably 5 or 6 books out of his art.
That's really amazing. Beyond just being able to share your dad's talent with the world, has this given you a new outlook on your writing career?
Oh, yeah, it definitely has. Like I said, I worked in public relations for many years, which is definitely a different kind of writing. And then I wrote feature stories. That's, if I had to say I specialized in anything, it would probably be feature stories for many years. And I've taught writing in college, University of Arkansas, Little Rock, and University of Central Arkansas. And so have to write children's books and rhymes. I never really set out. It was like, I'm going to write a rhyme. It just sort of came to me that way. Mm-hmm. And it felt like a natural way to tie the paintings together. And so that's why I thought, well, I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with rhymes. And it's challenging to write good rhymes for sure. But it's a different part of your brain, I think, and it's a good challenge for me at this point in my life. Yeah.
And it certainly is a great style to write for kids. They get to anticipate what might be coming and really feel empowered that, hey, I can figure out this reading thing at the point.
Yeah, and I definitely want young readers. It's something that first grade or so, first, second grade, that could definitely be able to pick out the words and start reading it. Yeah.
Yeah. This is really fantastic. I think obviously, sitting down and talking with our kids as we're reading What's So Special About a Tree, about nature, and encouraging kids to get out there and explore nature and fall in love with nature and do it together as a family. I think that this, just talking to our kids about the story of how you've put this together, would be really fascinating. I'm imagining kids would really love that.
Yeah, as I've read it to a few groups, little story times and things, I always tell them, this is my dad. He was an artist and he painted all of these paintings, and you can be an artist too. You can go outside and you can look at the beautiful trees and nature and paint and see all the different colors and the leaves and the, be inspired to be an artist or to write your own stories as well.
Yeah. We should tell everybody where they can go to find out more about your art and verse series.
Well, my website is vandusenbooks.com. They're available on Amazon or any bookshop, any online booksellers. So,
Great. We've had a fantastic time talking to the author of What's So Special About a Tree. Our guest has been Susan Polk Van Dusen. Susan, thanks for sharing this wonderful story with us.
Thank you for giving me the chance. Appreciate it.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and we hope you'll join us for the next exciting episode of the show. In the meantime, we'd love for you to subscribe to the show wherever you find your favorite podcast. You can find Reading with Your Kids. We love the iHeartRadio app. They nominated us for their Best Kids and Family Podcast Award. Brought me out to L.A. to walk the red carpet. It was so much fun. We love Good Pods. We are regularly in their top 10. We also love Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We love any platform that is carrying Reading with Your Kids, and that means every platform, because we're everywhere, and it's wonderful. We'd really appreciate it if you could write a 5-star review on whatever platform you find the show. If you could leave a review, that would be wonderful. It helps other people find the show and join our mission to help families grow closer through reading. We'd also love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at JeadlyMagic on X. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And we'd love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can check out our blog, visit our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame, and use the contact button up at the top of the page to send us a message. Let us know what you love about the show. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of Reading with Your Kids. You can also, if you're an author, please be sure to click the Authors Click Here button at the top of readingwithyourkids.com so you can find out how you can be a guest here on Reading with Your Kids. It's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of Kidlit fans all over the world about your fantastic children's book. You can also learn about our very effective and very affordable promotional programs. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. First, starting up with our guest, Susan Polk Van Dusen. Please be sure to check out What's So Special About a Tree. I also want to thank David Haben and Martin Stewart. Be sure to check out Bridget Vanderpuff and The Baked Escape. I had so much fun speaking with David and Martin. They were just fantastic. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.
Kindness is quite magical, and respect is magical too. When you travel as much as Gently does, the magic comes right through. But he's not alone in his quest, he's got some helpers in his crew. 3 dogs that help him stage his show and bring it right to you. Real Magic Podcast, it's so much fun in many ways. Real Magic Podcast, tune in and you'll be amazed. Gently leads the charge as a magician and a bit of a clown. Calvin is a goofy is a grumpy old beagle, or is he really a basset hound? And Daisy is a border collie wiener dog that knows her way